Hi and welcome to Radiance. Today I'm going to interview artist Helen Musselwhite. There are two parts to this interview. Hi, I'm here with the lovely Helen Musselwhite. Hello Helen.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. And for the listeners, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
I make paper sculptures, little worlds in boxes, in frames and domes, and I layer paper to create little scenes, little vignettes of woodland and woodland glades and lots of different things. Woodland glades seem to be quite a reoccurring theme, and a lot of deer and foxes and rabbits and things like that, and little houses too. Little houses that I'd like to live in, really. I think that this is what it's all about. It's little worlds, perfect little worlds that I'd just like to get into and live in, and hope that people that look at the work, they kind of feel the same way about it as well.
So have you always done this, or what did you first start off?
Well, I went to art college and I studied graphics and illustration there, and then when I left I got a conventional job as a graphic designer in a design company, and I worked there for a few years and I got made redundant, and I knew that I really, I wanted to keep in the same field, but I was kind of quite a creative person, and on the side I started to do lots of papier-mâché things, and I was making cupboards and things out of cardboard and then covering them with papier-mâché and painting them and selling them at craft fairs. And from that I went to making MDF cupboards and mirrors and clocks and things, and doing the same thing, illustrating, decorating them, and basically did that for about 5 years, and I sold to lots of little independent shops all over the country. I went to trade fairs, and it was brilliant. It was a really good thing to do, but I knew that it wouldn't last forever. It was right at the time. This is early 90s, and that was the right time to do things like that. And I did that for about 5 years, and it just it came to a natural end. And at the same time I was doing that, I struck up a friendship with a jeweller that worked in a studio that was next to mine. And after I finished doing my MDF cupboards and things, I went to work with her. And she taught me the rudiments of making jewellery, cutting out silver and bending it, curling it, heating it. And I used to make earrings and necklaces and brooches and things like that, and I really, really enjoyed doing it. But if you went wrong, it was quite expensive. Silver is...
Yeah, it's not like paper.
No, it's not like paper. And I did occasionally, she'd let me use gold, but that was a bit...
Scary.
That was very scary. And so I loved doing it. And at the same time I was working with her doing that, she also let me do the window displays in her shop, because she'd kind of gone from a studio to a shop. Mm-hmm. And the only materials that we had really were paper. They were easy to come by and easy to use. So I started to just make things out of paper. The first thing that I made for her was a Christmas window, and I made an angel out of white paper and tracing paper, and we hung it in the window. It's very simple. Well, it was just an angel, so the window was quite simple, but the actual angel was quite detailed. But loads of people came in and asked about it, and from then I just did all her windows for her, and that lasted a couple of years.
So did you keep doing recurring themes?
Yeah. And then the next Christmas, she had this idea of Jack in the Beanstalk. So, she had these cabinets in the window, and I made beanstalks going through them and things like that, and then we hung jewellery off of them. So it was very collaborative, because she was a creative person as well, and we kind of worked really well together. And so I think that's where the actual physical cutting of the paper started. And then about 4 years ago, we moved to where I live now in Manchester, and I left my job, and it seemed like the perfect time to start up on my own again. And I'd been doing little odds and ends of the paper and stuff like that, so I knew what I wanted to do, and I started off by just doing pure white pieces, and I quite liked those because they were completely full of things, but they looked calm because it's all in white paper, so you could have like this at first look, oh, it's lovely and calm, but then you look a bit closer and there's a rabbit behind there, and there's like a butterfly on the flower, and just detail. That's what I like. I like lots of detail. I like physically making the detail, but I like to look at detail as well. So I just did those and sold them to a very nice shop in Oxfordshire, and they sold quite well, and people started to say, oh, I really like them. Do you do them in colour? And it was just a natural progression to go from the white, and I still do make all white ones, but I'm just quite in love with colour as well.
What inspires you?
I think I take most inspiration from the countryside. I go out into the countryside every day when I'm walking my dog, Earl, who you've already met. Yeah. And where I live on the edge of Manchester, so I've got 1 foot in suburbia but 1 foot in the Cheshire countryside, and I only have to walk 2 minutes out of my door and I'm in the countryside. So I just look at things while I'm walking, and
do you take pictures?
Yeah. Sometimes I do, but I quite like to just keep it in my mind, kind of thing. I have got photos for reference, and I just look at how things daily change. You really start to notice the seasons as well, and I love the spring when the new leaves come, and just the shapes of them, and I get inspiration from the colours of nature as well. And yeah, it's just absolutely amazing, the intricacies of nature. And also, I see little birds. Quite often see the same birds. It's almost as if they come to say hello when I'm walking past. And rabbits. Earl likes to chase rabbits, and squirrels. They're his nemesis. So quite often, this time of year. And so that's the main inspiration. But I also get inspiration from just things around me. They don't have to be natural. It's just the way that colours kind of go put together, and it's not intentional. That might inspire me. It might be something that I find on the internet. I'm really into reading blogs by other artists and designers, and there's just so much to find on the internet, and you could never do it yourself, but if you go, I've got about 6 blogs that I visit, maybe once, twice a week, and they find these amazing things, and I click on and I'm inspired by those, and then I just find myself like an hour later, when I should be doing work, I'm somewhere else in the world on a website, on a blog, but that's inspiration as well. It's there, it's all
research.
Yeah, it is research, and it just inspires me that other people are so creative as well. It just makes me think that we just live in this amazingly creative world, and it never ceases to amaze me how people do think of such amazing things to do. So I do get inspiration from other people. And also, I just have to say that I quite like mid-century design, fabric design, illustration from the 50s and the 60s, and furniture design. They're all quite inspirational as well, and they might not come through necessarily in what I do because it's quite based around nature, but I like to look at things like that. I like to see how designers work and how they use nature in their designing as well, and I think that's really inspiring. So I've always got an eye for things like that as well.
They come into the backdrop though, don't they? Of your frames.
Yeah, and I think that the nice clean lines of a chair by Charles and Ray Eames is even though it seems miles away from what I do, there's something in the way that they design that is very inspirational, and I like typography as well, and maybe that's because I studied graphic design and I have used type in some of my pieces, so I quite like packaging and things like that as well. So the inspirations are many and varied.
You work on a small scale, but you also work on a larger scale now as well. How did these opportunities come about?
Purely through my website. I've just worked on my largest pieces to date, and they were for a new hotel that's opened in Surrey called Coworth Park, and I was contacted by the interior designers that were responsible for Coworth Park, and I think one of the designers there bought a piece of my work for an exhibition, and I always put a little label on the back with the name, because names of pieces are very important as well, and they've all got names, and it's got my website address on, and he just got in touch with me through my website and said, we'd like to commission you, and I did altogether I think 16 pieces of work for Coworth Park, but 2 of them were massive. They were probably 2.5 metres by maybe 1.20 metre, and they were for the winter drawing room, which is a public area in the hotel, and they were basically a woodland scene and using colours that were in the interior scheme, and they just let me do what I do, and I just went to town with it, and it just meant that I could get all the detail in, but because it's big, much bigger than I normally work on, I could put even more detail in and even more layers, and it worked out that the piece was probably about 30 centimetres deep, so it had about 10 layers as well, so I could really, really get into it and put in all the detail that I love that I can't do on my smaller versions, even though there is quite a lot of detail in them, and I like less is most definitely not more for me. More is more. It's got to be detailed. So they were brilliant to work on as well, because it just makes you think totally differently about how you work, and also the making of it as well. Because there were so many layers, I had to really think about how it would be seen from the sides. They were in purpose-built perspex frames, so they were clear all the way around. So I had to think about being neat as well, and it takes time to work out the scale of things as well.
Yeah. What was the reaction when you first showed them what you'd done?
Well, this is how I work with things like this. I went to visit them and I took them a small piece, and then they commissioned me, and I've never shown them what I've done. I send them photographs of the stages that I get to, and then they get sent off, the work goes, and I don't see it again unless they take a photograph of it for me. So there's kind of, even though we're in contact over the internet and with photos, I think
it's a process, isn't it?
It is a process, yeah, definitely. But I work. Will
you go and visit the hotel?
Well, yeah, we'd like to go. I mean, see if we get special rates, it'd be quite nice. But I think it's really important, because these are such big pieces, and they're very different for me, and it could lead into lots of other things, a whole new sphere, a new area of work. So I need to photograph them or get them professionally photographed and put on my website, because I need people to see how I'm moving on from my small things. Yes.
Part 2 of artist Helen Musselwhite's interview at Radiance continues after this, where she talks about working with Stella McCartney and also other fantastic and interesting stories. Keep listening.